Good morning. Back for another video. I wanted to take a few moments here and talk about something that is tough on a lot of through hikers. You walk through 2,100 miles and about 92, give or take, depending on the year, just to get to Baxter State Park and be stressed out for 10 miles before, wondering what am I going to do? How am I going to get up there? Because you hear all kinds of rumors, all kinds of opinions, all kinds of stories of how hard it is to be able to climb Katahdin. And I don't mean physically climbing Katahdin. That's a challenge in its own. But if you've already walked 2,192 miles, you're ready for it, trust me. It's tough, but it's not anywhere near as tough as, say, some of southern Maine and some of the whites. I thought it was refreshingly easy, actually, compared to some of those. You have a couple of scrambly, big boulder scrambles, but the rest of the scrambles are pretty easy. There's some wind and some exposure up there, but that's about it. But at that point, you have so much adrenaline to finish, you should be fine. However, the one thing a lot of people are stressed about is, what am I going to do? There's a place called the Birches, which is the campground, if you want to call it that, that's in Baxter State Park, where Appalachian Trail through-hikers are to stay before they summit the day before. It is limited to 12. I believe it's the number 12. After that, you hear all kinds of rumors. Only 12 people can summit Katahdin in a day for through hikers. Anyone besides that, you're going to have to stay there, and you might get stuck a second day, a third day, a fourth day. And you hear all kinds of rumors that just stresses you out as far as, am I going to be able to climb after all this time? And the other reason that is so stressful is because then you're also trying to figure out transportation. Trying to figure out, how am I going to get down from Katahdin? How am I going to get to my train or my plane to get home after my through hike is over? And then the other thing is, there's not a lot of cell service coming up to Baxter State Park. Once you're in Baxter State Park, there's no cell service, at least for Verizon and T-Mobile, from my understanding. Verizon, definitely not for me. But there's a place called Rainbow Ledges that's before Baxter State Park, about, I think it's 5 or 6 miles before. And that's supposed to be your last cell service. So that's when you get all your shuttle and everything lined up. However, not everybody, not every carrier do you get service with, even at those ledges. So it can be stressful. Even I, who is a very spontaneous person, does things at the very end, was pretty stressed about this because of all the rumors. I had a train set up for the day after the summit of Katahdin that I needed to be at. And I was starting to hear things like I might get there and might not be able to get in or anything else. So I'm hopefully going to ease some of that stress for you, future through hikers and future summiters of Katahdin. So coming into Baxter State Park the day before, there's a shelter just a few miles before Baxter State Park. Then there's a lake called Rainbow Lake. And there's several spots you could camp, stealth around there, and even a campsite at 11 miles before the state park. That's actually where I stayed the night before. I had went 34 miles on that day, and I was done. So I stayed at the campsite, knowing I was leaving myself 11 miles in the morning. I know my average, I know what I could do, even though that area is quite rocky. So I was leaving at 11 miles and knowing I was going to get up quite early, because I was stressed and I wanted to get to Baxter State Park as early as possible. So here's the thing, you want to get to Baxter State Park early in the morning. If that means staying at the shelter, do that. If that means staying around the lake, then do that. If that means you could be 11 miles out and that works out for what you was doing the day before, then by all means do that. It's really up to you and what your comfort level is. You could also get to Baxter State Park, and as soon as you cross the A-Ball Bridge, there's a campground there that you could also stay at. I believe there is a fee of $10. If I remember right, you just have to register and you could stay there for the night. That is still 9, 10, 11 miles or so inside the park from the summit of Katahdin. So that would make for a really long day if you left from that campsite, but it can be done, and I'll get more into that. Obviously, what you want to do is get to the Birches. So you want to be able to have just a few miles that day, walk in there, get there early in the morning, and this is what you do. There's a guard shack. When I say a guard shack, that's from my truck dispatching days. It's not a guard shack, it's a ranger shack, so to speak. Just a, oh boy, it's slipping my mind. But basically just a little place where they stand and has maps and your registry, notebook and everything. You might have to go to that, which is a half a mile from A-Ball Bridge. So as soon as you come out of the 100-mile wilderness, you get onto a road called Golden Road. You walk on Golden Road, you cross A-Ball Bridge, which is your first big view of Summit Katahdin. As soon as you cross that bridge, over to your left is that first campground. I'm not sure what it's called. It might be A-Ball Bridge Campground. I don't know for sure. But that's where you can stay if you get in later in the day and just want to stay somewhere that night and then register the next day. From that spot, you still have to go another 9 or 10 miles before you would get to the Birches, which is where the AT hikers stay. So you want to keep that in mind if you're leaving yourself 3 or 4 miles the night before for that next day. It's going to be added on. So I had 11 miles that got added on, obviously, to the miles that I had to get to where I could camp that night for Katahdin. So I went in there being nervous, thinking I wasn't going to get a spot. I left at 4 o'clock in the morning. I get there and some people were already registered, already had their spot in the Birches. I asked them, is there any left in the Birches? And they said, we don't think so. We think that the 12th person just got theirs. So of course, a little panicky at that point, like, okay, here we go. For me, I needed to be there so I could get out the next day. So that was a stressful thing for me. I do the half a mile walk to the area where the park ranger is, and if it's the same one in years later when you're listening to this, his name is Don, Ranger Don, and they call him Donald Duck. He calls himself Donald Duck. He actually used to be the chief of police in Millinocket, and now he's out there working with thru-hikers, making sure he can find that spot. So here's the first thing I want to tell you. They will find you a spot. They will find you a spot. There are times, I'm sure, that they cannot get you a spot, but they will do everything in their power to get you a spot. Certain handicap spots cannot be opened up until that morning. If you wanted to call and reserve in one of the other campgrounds there, you can also do that. You would need to do that a few days prior and pay the fee and be able to just go there, which would get you closer to the trail leading up to the summit of Katahdin. If you want to stay where the thru-hikers stay, which is a $10 fee, which is the Birches, get there early for that, especially if you're in the bubble. I did not start off in the bubble, but because of 2 months of Lyme, it put me in the bubble during this time. So people had already gotten there that was staying at the shelter or at the campground, directly inside next to that general store. So it was full. I get to Don and I said, do you have anything left? He said, actually, I just had a spot open up that I just found out about in the A-Ball campground, which is different than that original campground when you get into the park, the state park. This particular one was going to be $30, but it had 4 spots on it. This was actually a mini shelter and then spots a tent as well. So 4 people could stay there. I knew there were 3 other hikers behind me, one of which was Rob, and then I also knew about Tudor and Granny that was there, and I thought, well, this is perfect. All 3 of them will have a place to stay as well that night. So I said, yeah, put me down and reserve that for me. And he said, well, what's the other 4? And like I said, told him the names, and that was reserved. So it looked like I had the last spot. I had the last spot as of then. I go up back to the general store and I eat some food, and they come walking in. I was the one who left at 4 o'clock in the morning. They did not. So they come walking in, got this spot. They were all happy. Yes, all right, thanks, Fortune, and everything else. And then come to find out, Don, who has now walked up to the general store. So if you don't see him at the general store, walk back to where he hangs out, that 6.6 miles back, to his spot where the sign-in sheet and everything is. He will do everything he can to get you in. They don't want you hanging out at the state park as a thru-hiker. They want to get you in and out as fast as possible. So they will try to find you a spot. There's different campgrounds they can use. The handicap spots go last. Sometimes people cancel, whatever it may be. I don't know if there was anyone who didn't get a spot, to be honest, that day that got in by noon. I wouldn't recommend getting in by noon. I'd recommend getting in as early as you can. But basically, that $30 divided by 4, what was that? $750? Yeah, $750 a piece for 4 people to be able to camp there. It was a 2-mile road walk to get to the spot where the Birches would have been. So while they were walking up 5 miles to the summit from the Birches, I was walking 7 miles. That was no big deal because I was walking 5 miles down. It was going to be a 12-mile day, which was pretty simple for me, even though I was having some back spasms and back problems that day. It was still a pretty quick day, done by 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So do not panic. You're going to get there in plenty of time. As far as the ledges are concerned, you might have a signal there so you can work out transportation, everything down from the mountain. That's going to be a totally different video that I'll talk about. How do I get down from the mountain? How do I get home? I'll talk about that in the next video. But know that you do not need to have stress. You can definitely call one of the campgrounds there at Baxter State Park and reserve, or go online and reserve a spot. You need to do that in plenty of time. I think it's weeks in advance you should do that. And that's hard to do because you don't know what day you're really going to get there. And that's, then you have a schedule to stick to, which is not as fun for a through hike. You should be more free than that, in my opinion. So don't be worried. You're going to get there early. Try to get there by 9 o'clock in the morning. Look for Ranger Don or whichever other ranger is working at that point. They're going to do all they can to get you into a place. And if not, this is the other option. Stay at the campground that's right over A-Ball Bridge when you first get into Baxter State Park. You can stay there overnight and be first in line the following morning and get on the list then for the birches. Or you can walk right from that campground very early in the morning and go summit Katahdin and then come back. You don't have to be at the birches or one of those other campgrounds that's closer to. If you do not mind going the 11 miles and then the 5 miles back, feel free to do that. That's up to you. The only reason that would be an issue is if they had, and this could be a weekend where they had too many hikers trying to summit that day, and they might stop you because they will shut down the road at some point, saying nobody else can try to summit today. That, I haven't seen anybody run into that problem, but that could run into the problem if the birches are full, all the campgrounds are full, and then you're walking from this first campground, which is 9 or 11 miles back, which obviously you begin there quite a bit later, and they might already have too many hikers that's in at that point. No need to stress. Just try to get there early, and if not, you're going to be able to hang out by a general store and eat some food. So no need to stress. You're not going to be sitting there for 3 and 4 days. They don't limit it to just 12 hikers a day. They limit the birches to 12 hikers, and they have other places for you to stay. So hopefully this helps free up some stress, and know that when you're going in, it's not as hard as what a lot of people make it sound like. Just keep in mind, I just need to be there early, set yourself up for success the day before, and you'll be fine. The next video, I'm going to talk about how do I get down from Katahdin, the transportation, and then to get back home, the transportation. Good informative stuff that a lot of people stress about on a through hike. You don't need to. I know there's not a whole lot of videos out there to talk about this, so hopefully that helps you. Live life.